hike in interest rates is not just in Nigeria. It doesn't look like any country has escaped this. But the case with Nigeria seems compounded with high import bill, top on the list being oil. And the worst hit at this time seems like the aviation sector. Aero contractors and Dana Airlines may not be flying for a while. Well, I think maybe we've heard that news, but we have Bolanle Agbaje, analyst for financial derivatives company, joining us now to help us understand some of the magnitude and how this could affect you. She's here in the studio. Good morning, Bolanle.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
I missed you on Tuesday.
Yes.
But it doesn't look like a very good one for the aviation sector. 2 airlines.
Yes.
And already I don't think we have enough to cater for the demand that we have, and now minus 2 airlines.
It's a very essential industry, you know, and also very, very sensitive in terms of the fact that, you know, it's a very high cost operation. So in any case, when you have situations where costs are increasing rapidly compared to like the demand in terms of like revenue coming into the particular sector, it becomes tricky for airline operations because you're talking about labor costs, you're talking about fuel costs, you're talking about maintenance, which is necessary and essential to, you know, keep the flights running. And
I think they have a lot of documentation, licensing that they have to pay for.
Yes, because it's a very high-risk industry as well. So it's usually, like, I'm actually happy at the fact that, you know, they've mentioned that they're going to actually, you know, stop to more or less, you know, take a step back, look at their cost and maintain their airlines as well, as opposed to keep flying and putting, you know, a lot of passengers at risk.
I think we heard that Dana had a near an emergency landing.
And you know, it's not necessarily good. It's not an industry that can be managed. You know, you have other manufacturers that, you know, can either tweak cost here and there, you know, actually maybe in the bread sector, for example, but when you're talking about aviation industry, there is no management. It's either this or that when it comes to, you know, the cost environment.
And of course, this is going to have a lot of effects.
Yes, definitely on transportation movement.
On transportation,
it will definitely
pricing.
impact businesses, pricing as well. You know, cost environment would definitely increase further. And you're talking about inflation numbers already at 18.6. It's just going to make things worse, at least in the short term.
And the alternative doesn't look so attractive.
Yeah, road transportation. Yes, and rail. It's not necessarily, especially rail. We haven't really tapped into the potential for rail in this country. Road transportation, everybody's talking about the high risk, you know, because you have a situation where the security levels are already heightened. So traveling by road seems like a no-brainer for so many people in the country.
And the price of diesel and the price of aviation fuel
is not aviation fuel is currently at about 780 naira per litre, in line with diesel, and that's just because you're not seeing subsidies in that sector. I know some of these airlines, the fact that they're pulling out, it means they're actually crying for help and maybe calling to the government to do something about the cost of jet fuel.
Wow. And so if this fits into inflation, and then
it will definitely be translated to, you know, the individual consumers.
And then, of course, the CBN governor has said that once inflation is up, you can expect that
more hikes. Yes, and also, you know, the fact that most of these airlines are also heavily, you know, dependent on Forex as well. So Forex is a major issue. It has been, and it still it's still going to continue to be an issue for them because of the fact that, you know, we're seeing dollar scarcity in the market. And most of their costs are based in dollars. So it's not necessarily great for them to operate in this environment.
You know, at the MPC, the CBN governor did reel out some achievements through the 100 for 100 program, the RT 200 having brought about $3 billion as of June into the system. Are this not helping to ease the tension?
Yeah, so like the previous guest mentioned, it's the fact that, you know, most of these issues are cost related, and it will be very difficult, as we're seeing all around the world. You've seen, you know, hike rates by the Bank of England 5 times now, and you're still expecting more. I think they had already done that 25 basis points, but now everybody's talking about 50 basis points and 100, you know, and that's just because a lot of these problems are actually cost related. And the only way to, you know, solve these issues, as much as you have the monetary policy there, you also have the supply side, the fiscal policies as well, that have to work hand in hand, because you're talking about increasing supply of some of these products. The monetary policy cannot handle that. The only thing they can handle is, you know, more or less looking at inflation or policies that actually target, inflation rate and GDP in any sense from the money side of things. But the physical side looks at, actually boosting supply within the economy. So it obviously has to work hand in hand, and I don't think that's what's happening at the moment, because most governments, their hands are actually tied. There's no funding. Most governments are actually in debt, and it's actually increasing.
You're talking about state governments?
State governments, yes. No, well, not just state and federal.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. But in Nigeria, when we're talking about supply and then we're talking about non-oil exports,
yeah.
And we delve to state government. I mean, we've been talking about our state government really maximizing the potentials, of this non-oil exports. So we see the CBN bringing the RT200 and talking to exporters. But are the states digging deep into, especially agriculture?
Yeah.
Although then we'll now come up with the issue of security. Security
and implementation. I think, learning to more or less, the rule book of how to actually pass on these policies to the day-to-day operations is very difficult, I think, in Nigeria. Most people don't actually understand the workings of how to actually translate these policies or implement these policies within the market. And I think that's actually the major problem. As much as there's lack of funding, you do have, times when the CBN actually pushes, funding out for specific, and also the issue of corruption as well is still, most people are not still talking about it, but corruption is still heavily a major problem within the country.
I think another problem, according to what the MPC noted, is the money supply that's coming from the political scene now. Yeah. I think that's also a factor of fueling inflation at this time. And we don't expect it to abate, not until after the election.
Exactly, and that's, you're looking at least first quarter next year, and that's, is the inevitable, and it's the more or less the reason why investors are not coming in, because the risk environment now is actually quite heightened by, the political scene, and also the fact that the policies when it comes to Forex is not necessarily clear for them.
Talking about Forex, so the aviation sector also has, the repatriation order.
Yes, repatriation issues as well. That has also made, operation of some of these airlines prove very difficult. We're talking about the domestic. Even the international airlines are also facing the heat. You have some airlines that are overbooking. That has been, a trend that a lot of people have been complaining about. And obviously that comes because they're trying to find ways to increase revenue in this particularly high-cost environment.
Wow. I wonder where the lights will come in all of this. Because, I mean, Nigeria cannot look at the U.S. U.S. has its own. Yeah. The U.S. cannot look at the U.K.
But
the U.K. is expecting recession soon.
Yes. Well, globally,
globally,
I think
ECB
most
is
countries...
also hike rates. I think today or tomorrow or so.
But, we're just in a peculiar situation at the moment. The same way we had the 2014 to 2009... Is this
because of the war in Ukraine?
So
would it have happened even if there was no war?
I think the war made it worse. If the war was in there, I'm sure by now would be more or less getting to levels, the pre-pandemic levels, which we had even seen before the war started.
In some sectors,
but the war has actually made a lot worse. The fact that Russia is a lot of countries are heavily dependent on a lot of commodities from Russia and Ukraine as well. And that is evident now in the world. And I think the West is trying to find ways and new policies to make sure that in the next few years, Russia is not going to be as important as it is at the moment, especially when it comes to oil. And even wheat as well.
But I think the World Bank or the IMF has said that there's no way any country can plug in Russia's oil and gas.
Well, it's like Saudi, you're right in that sense, because Saudi has actually come out to say 13 million barrels per day is their limit, is their max, and to even get to that point, they have to, it requires significant amount of investment. I think currently they produce about 11 million barrels to 12 million barrels per day, and it's still not enough. And if they're talking about the fact that 13 million barrels by the world's largest producer, amongst the OPEC allies, then it shows that achieving that point where they're not heavily dependent on Russian oil is going to be difficult. And the fact that, we're talking about electric cars and all of that, but it's not realistic in the sense that how would electric cars actually take over from, you know, petrol powered vehicles, it's going to be a difficult one. And even in Nigeria, using Nigeria as an example, we're not even able to power our houses with
the grid is down for the seventh time
exactly
this year.
So talking about electric cars is not coming anytime soon.
And then I wonder why we can't leverage gas.
I think it's, you know, lack of the knowledge there, the knowledge aspect of it, and the funding, and obviously the infrastructure as well is quite huge. I don't think it's something, you know, the government is looking at the moment.
Yeah, I think the NNPC said they're looking at it, but I guess it's the investment that is needed.
The investment needed is quite huge. You know, they haven't even reached the investment peak for oil. Actually, the fact that we haven't even gotten exactly, so we're not even reaching that point. Talk less of, you know, getting to the point of gas.
Okay, well, let's look at commodities now. Cocoa is up 0.69% to $2,347. That's supposed to help us.
With our export revenue, yes, it should. Cocoa is up due to the fact that although we've seen, you know, increase in supply and reduction in demand, because, you know, most people are not necessarily, the demand is quite low. Chocolate is a luxury good. I don't think, you know, in times of high inflation, everybody is looking to spend on, you know, luxury goods like that. But at the same time, we had seen floods in Ivory Coast that had reduced or prevented transportation of some of the cocoa products to the ports. So that had obviously translated to higher prices.
Supply chain disruption.
Yes, supply chain disruption. So that obviously affected the price of cocoa. But I think Nigeria is actually taking advantage of it. We currently produce about 270,000 metric tons. And obviously at the end of this season, moving into the harvest period, we do expect that, you know, our cocoa production would actually increase, and we should benefit from these high prices.
Okay, at least let's have one good news.
Yes.
And then palm oil export from Indonesia is also set to soar.
Yes.
They've lifted their export, I mean, they were very strict.
Temporarily.
Yeah.
Yes, so...
they want to make some money.
Of course.
Everybody needs money.
Yes, of course. And, you know, we are, you know, major exporters and major importers of palm oil as well. And I think the current price of palm oil is about 20,000. Is down at the moment. So obviously that is good news.
But the bottle is not yet down.
Well, it's down in comparison to where it was, you know, a few months back. So that's
all right. It's good and bad. I guess that's the way life is.
Yes.
We just have to find a way to get through it. Bolanle Agbaji, analyst with Financial Derivatives Company, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
All right.